Good afternoon, everyone. This is the news with b.c.begley. I am your host, and it's Wednesday, November the 5th, 2025. And let's jump right into the top news stories of the day. Democrat Zoran Mamdani, a 34-year-old Democratic socialist, has won New York's mayoral race, defeating former Governor Andrew Cuomo by about 9 points. This, according to NBC News. His campaign energized progressives nationwide, while drawing backlash from President Donald Trump, Republicans, and moderate Democrats. In his victory speech, Mamdani declared that New York City would, quote, be the light in a time of political darkness, and vowed to fight oligarchy and authoritarianism. The former state assemblyman's meteoric rise from obscurity into the mayor's office marks a new chapter for New York City politics, NBC News has reported. As mayor, Mamdani plans to pursue ambitious reforms, including rent freezes, universal child care, free buses, and city-run grocery stores. Democratic Representative Mikey Sherrill, a former Navy pilot and federal prosecutor, first elected to Congress in 2018, has won New Jersey's gubernatorial race, defeating Republican Jack Ciattarelli, this according to the Associated Press. Her victory marks the first time since the 1960s that Democrats have held the governor's office in New Jersey for 3 consecutive terms. The closely contested race drew national attention as one of the first statewide elections since President Donald Trump began his second term, with President Trump endorsing Ciattarelli and former President Barack Obama campaigning for Sherrill. Both candidates focused on affordability and rising living costs, but the campaign turned bitter in its final weeks with personal attacks and controversies, NPR has reported. Sherrill's win adds to Democrats' strong night nationally, following Abigail Spanberger's victory in Virginia. Democrat Abigail Spanberger has won Virginia's gubernatorial race, defeating Republican Winsome Earl Sears to become the first woman to lead the state, NBC News has projected. The former Congresswoman and CIA officer ran a campaign focused on affordability, public safety, and abortion rights, portraying herself as a pragmatic moderate. Spanberger's decisive 57% to 42% victory in the blue-leaning state gives Democrats key momentum following their 2024 losses. Her opponent, Earl Sears, tied herself closely to President Donald Trump and then struggled to define her own message, despite emphasizing continuity with Governor Glenn Youngkin's administration, NBC News has reported. Spanberger's win was fueled by voter dissatisfaction with President Trump and the federal government shutdown, as well as her strong support among those prioritizing the economy. A UPS cargo plane crashed and exploded while taking off from Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport in Kentucky, killing at least 7 people and injuring 11, authorities have reported. The crash occurred around 5:15 p.m. on Tuesday as the plane departed for Honolulu from UPS Worldport. Kentucky's Governor Andy Beshear said 16 families have reported loved ones missing, and first responders continued searching for additional victims. Emergency officials initially issued a 5-mile shelter-in-place order that was later reduced to a quarter-mile radius as air quality was monitored, the Associated Press has reported. Video footage showed the plane lifting slightly before exploding, with flames, smoke, and damage to nearby buildings. 4 of the fatalities were on the ground, not on the aircraft. A man drove his car into pedestrians and cyclists in France on Wednesday morning, injuring at least 10 people, 4 of them critically. The 35-year-old local suspect, known to police for prior behavioral and alcohol issues, shouted Allah Akbar during the attack, intentionally set his vehicle on fire, and then was subdued with a stun gun before being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Victims, aged 22 to 67, were airlifted to the University Hospital, the Telegraph has reported. Authorities are investigating the motive, including possible mental health issues, and French President Emmanuel Macron is monitoring the situation while the Interior Minister plans to visit the island. A U.S. military strike killed 2 people aboard an alleged drug smuggling vessel in the eastern Pacific Ocean, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced. The strike, described as a lethal kinetic strike, targeted a boat in international waters that was said to be operated by a designated terrorist organization carrying narcotics along a known trafficking route. Hegseth released video of the strike, but did not provide the exact location or evidence supporting the trafficking claims. This was at least the 16th such strike since President Donald Trump returned back to office, which have collectively killed at least 66 people, NBC News has reported. Civil liberties groups have challenged the legality of the strikes, arguing they target civilians without a formal declaration of war. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has called the police operation against Rio de Janeiro's Red Command gang, which left 121 dead, a quote massacre. The raid involved thousands of officers clashing with heavily armed gang members, who reportedly used drones dropping explosives. Police identified 99 of the dead as criminals, including 42 with active arrest warrants, though the operation also claimed some police officers' lives. The violence exposed Rio's ongoing security challenges, sparking both criticism from rights activists and support from residents frustrated by the crime, CBS News has reported. Lula has proposed a minimum 30-year prison sentence for gang members amid growing debate over the government's approach to tackling organized crime. California voters have approved Proposition 50, giving the Democrat-controlled state legislature temporary authority to redraw congressional districts, bypassing the nonpartisan commission. The move could create up to 5 new Democratic-leaning districts, countering GOP efforts in states like Texas, Missouri, and North Carolina to gain additional Republican seats ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. California Governor Gavin Newsom, a likely 2028 presidential contender, led the push for the initiative, framing it as a way to check President Donald Trump and to protect Democratic control in Congress. Democrats hailed the measure as a rebuke of GOP attempts at mid-decade redistricting, while Republicans criticized it as a partisan power grab, Fox News has reported. The decision puts California at the center of national redistricting battles, with high stakes for control of the U.S. House of Representatives. The United States Supreme Court is set to hear arguments on whether President Donald Trump can unilaterally impose tariffs on nearly every country under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The case challenges a core part of President Trump's second-term economic agenda, with lower courts ruling that most of the tariffs exceed the president's authority. The tariffs, including a baseline 10% on nearly all trading partners and higher rates on China, Canada, and Mexico over trade deficits and drug trafficking, were justified by President Trump as responses to national emergencies. Several small businesses and Democratic-led states sued, arguing that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act does not authorize such sweeping tariff powers. The appeals courts have largely sided with them while allowing the collection of the tariffs to continue, CBS News has reported. A Supreme Court ruling could set a major precedent on the limits of presidential powers in trade and national security matters. Okay, here's a look at the live weather radar from the National Weather Service. And now let's go into the National Weather Forecast for today. Unsettled weather will affect the Pacific Northwest and Northern California through early Friday, bringing periods of heavy rain and a limited flash flood threat. High wind watches are in effect for northern Montana, the northern Mid-Atlantic, and the southern New England area due to strong wind gusts expected through Thursday. The west will see multiple frontal systems bringing heavy coastal rain and mountain snow, while the Great Lakes and the Northeast experience modest rainfall and isolated thunderstorms. Near the Mississippi Valley, it will help maintain onshore Pacific flow and dry downslope winds across the Rockies and the Appalachians. Meanwhile, much of the southern United States and the Mid-Atlantic will stay dry and seasonably warm, with locally elevated fire weather risks in parts of Virginia and Texas. Japan has deployed troops to the Akita Prefecture to help manage a surge in bear attacks, which have injured over 100 people and killed at least 12 since April. Both brown bears and Asiatic black bears have been increasingly seen near schools, train stations, supermarkets, and hot springs as they forage ahead of hibernation. The operation involves soldiers setting up food-lured box traps, transporting local hunters, and helping dispose of dead bears, but they will not use any firearms. The bear population, estimated at over 54,000, is encroaching on residential areas in a region with a rapidly aging and declining human population, the Associated Press has reported. Officials say the mission is urgent to protect residents' daily lives, though the self-defense forces cannot provide unlimited support due to staffing constraints. Prosecutors in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore have seized hundreds of millions of dollars in assets belonging to a Cambodian businessman named Chen Ji, accused by the United States of leading a global cyber scam syndicate. Chen, founder of the Prince Holding Group, faces U.S. charges of wire fraud and money laundering, alongside a massive seizure of $14 billion in Bitcoin and joint sanctions from the United States and the United Kingdom's authorities. The network allegedly scammed victims across multiple countries, including 250 in the United States, through schemes ranging from fake investments to romance scams. Singapore, Taiwan, and Hong Kong have confiscated luxury assets, including yachts, high-end cars, apartments, cash, and stocks, while UK authorities seized a mansion and an office building, NPR has reported. Chen, a Chinese national with Cambodian citizenship and has ties to the country's elite, reportedly amassed his fortune largely through scams, despite also running legitimate businesses and serving as an advisor to Cambodia's leaders. Gaza's largest functioning hospital received the bodies of 15 more Palestinians returned from Israel, continuing exchanges that was outlined in last month's fragile ceasefire. Since the U.S. brokered agreement, the International Committee of the Red Cross has transported 285 bodies to Gaza, though identifying them is hindered by limited DNA testing. The returns coincide with Israel receiving the body of Italy Chen, an Israeli soldier that was killed on October the 7th as part of the ceasefire's initial phase requiring Hamas to return all hostage remains. Both sides have accused each other of violating aspects of the agreement, with Hamas citing logistical challenges and Israeli officials alleging partial or staged returns, the AP has reported. The next phase of the 20-point plan, including an international stabilization force, will only proceed once all Israeli hostages' remains are returned. Typhoon Kalmegi has killed at least 66 people and left 26 others missing in the central Philippines, with widespread flooding trapping residents on rooftops and sweeping away vehicles. 6 of the fatalities occurred when a Philippine Air Force helicopter crashed while en route to provide disaster relief. Cebu Province, still recovering from a 6.9 magnitude earthquake in late September, was hardest hit, prompting a state of calamity declaration as flash floods inundated communities. Hundreds of thousands were evacuated ahead of the storm, which brought winds of up to 81 miles per hour and wind gusts of up to 112 miles per hour, while transportation was heavily disrupted, with ferries banned and 186 domestic flights canceled, The Guardian has reported. The Philippines, prone to typhoons, earthquakes, and volcanic activity, faces reoccurring natural disasters that regularly threaten lives and infrastructure. Fierce street fighting continues in Pokrovsk, in the eastern part of Ukraine, as Russian forces advance on the strategic city, much of which lies in ruins. Ukraine's general staff denied claims that its troops were encircled, but analysts warn the situation is deteriorating, with Russian forces only a few kilometers from surrounding Ukrainian positions. Kyiv deployed special forces in a daring operation to shift the battlefield momentum, but the effort has yet to change the tactical situation, while shortages of personnel and relentless Russian drone attacks strain Ukraine's defenses. Russian troops have also introduced jet-powered glide bombs, increasing pressure on Ukraine's already stretched air defenses. Though Moscow's advance still remains slow and costly, The Guardian has reported. The battle for Pokrovsk is seen as critical for control of Donetsk, with potential implications for Russian pushes toward Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, even as Ukrainian forces face challenges on other fronts. China's Shenzhou-20 crewed spacecraft has delayed its return back to Earth after possibly being struck by small pieces of space debris, the China Manned Space Agency has announced. The delay is under review as officials conduct impact analysis and risk assessments, though no new landing date has been provided. Shenzhou-20 is docked at the Tiangong Space Station alongside Shenzhou-21, currently in a handover period, and if repairs cannot be made, Shenzhou-21 or a backup spacecraft could bring the crew home. The incident underscores the growing dangers posed by space debris, which has prompted international calls for better space traffic management and coordination, NBC News has reported. China has also developed technologies such as deorbiting sails to reduce collision risks and safely remove spacecraft from orbit. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that the war in Sudan is starting to spiral out of control, urging an immediate halt to the fighting and the violence. The Rapid Support Forces, also known as the RSF, reportedly are backed by the UAE, and they've recently seized El Fasher in Darfur after an 18-month siege, with reports emerging of civilians being shot, including in a maternity hospital. The 2-year civil war between the Sudanese armed forces and the RSF has caused over 150,000 deaths and displaced more than 14 million people, prompting the International Criminal Court to collect evidence of alleged mass killings, rape, and other crimes. And while the United States has proposed a 3-month humanitarian pause leading to a permanent ceasefire and the transition to civilian rule, the SAF is resisting, demanding that the RSF withdraw from cities as a condition, The Guardian has reported. Sudanese officials and Guterres emphasized that ending the atrocities in El Fasher and protecting civilians must take priority before any peace talks can progress. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has declared that Syrians no longer have grounds for asylum in Germany following the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government, urging them to return back home and help rebuild their own country. He indicated that voluntary returns are expected, though those who refuse could face deportation, a stance that partly contradicts the foreign minister who cited ongoing instability and devastation in Syria. Over 1 million Syrians live in Germany, with many integrated into the workforce, including more than 7,000 doctors serving critical health needs, raising concerns about the impact of mass returns. The debate comes amid upcoming state elections, where the far-right AfD party is challenging the Christian Democrats, and after a recent security incident involving a Syrian national plotting an attack, The Guardian has reported. Merz has invited Syria's interim president to Germany to discuss deportations of Syrians with criminal records, while the foreign minister emphasized that increasing deportations aligns with the government's shared goals. Today is November the 5th, 2025, and on this day in history, in the year 1605, the Guy Fawkes-led gunpowder plot to blow up the English Parliament was foiled when he was discovered guarding explosives beneath the House of Lords. In the year 1872, Susan B. Anthony defied U.S. voting laws by casting a ballot in a presidential election and was later arrested for doing so. And in the year 1940, Franklin D. Roosevelt was re-elected to an unprecedented third term as President of the United States. And November the 5th is also National Love Your Red Hair Day. Okay, it's 19 past the hour, and let's do a quick market update. Gold is up 1.29% today. Oil is down 1.19%. Bitcoin is up 2.03%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 0.15%. And the S&P 500 is up 0.51%. And the Nasdaq is up 0.70% today. Alright, hey, real quick, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of our news stories and our live shows. And now let's go into our last block of news for today. The current United States government shutdown has now become the longest in U.S. history, surpassing the previous record from late 2018 into early 2019. It ended on the 35th day, when President Donald Trump signed a 3-week funding extension at 9:23 p.m. local time. The shutdown spanned the transition from daylight savings time to standard time, effectively passing the previous record an hour earlier. Government shutdowns in their modern form began in 1980, following legal rulings that agencies cannot spend without congressional approval, The Guardian has reported. Since then, there have been 15 government shutdowns, including this one. The head of the Air Traffic Controllers Union has warned that the government shutdown, now in its 36th day, could take weeks for the industry to recover. Nick Daniels, president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, said the holiday season will be severely affected by staffing shortages, as controllers missed their first full paycheck last week. Essential employees, including air traffic controllers and TSA screeners, are working without pay, and Daniels warned that the long-term impacts could include resignations and ongoing disruptions. The industry is already 300 to 400 controllers short compared to 2019, and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy noted a 2,000 to 3,000 controller shortfall from ideal staffing levels, CNBC has reported. While he has not yet closed U.S. airspace, Duffy said continued shutdown delays could become severe. Maine voters approved a red flag or extreme risk protection gun law, making it the 22nd state with such legislation, allowing family members to petition courts to remove firearms from those deemed a risk to themselves or others. The law differs from Maine's existing yellow flag law, which requires law enforcement to petition and conduct behavioral health assessments before confiscation. Proponents argue the measure protects due process, requiring sworn evidence in court, while opponents, including Governor Janet Mills, warn it could burden families and weaken current safeguards. Mills noted that Maine's existing law has successfully led to over 1,100 court orders to remove firearms and is highly effective, NBC News has reported. 4 other New England states, Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, already have similar laws. Detroit City Council President Mary Sheffield won the 2025 mayoral election, becoming the first woman elected as the city's mayor. She received 76,561 votes, defeating the Reverend Solomon Kinloch, who earned 22,588 votes. Sheffield will succeed Mayor Mike Duggan, who opted not to seek a 4th term and is running for Michigan governor in 2026. Duggan endorsed Sheffield after the primary. Sheffield previously made history as the youngest person elected to the city council back in 2013 and as council president in 2022, CBS News has reported. Her campaign focused on boosting the economy and education, reducing crime, supporting small businesses, and lowering property taxes. 2 men, Logan David Patterson, 18 years old, and Dominic Frank Cardoza, 20 years old, were arrested on Tuesday for a weekend explosion at the Harvard Medical Research Lab. They are charged with conspiracy to damage a federally funded building using fire or explosives. Authorities said tips from the public helped identify the suspects after surveillance images were released. The men reportedly filmed the explosion and shared it with friends, and so far, investigators see no evidence of a political motive, CNN has reported. The incident comes amid ongoing discussions between Harvard and the White House regarding federal funding and lawsuits involving the university. McDonald's missed Wall Street's third quarter earnings expectations, reporting adjusted earnings of $3.22 per share versus the $3.33 per share that was anticipated, and revenue of $7.08 billion compared with the $7.1 billion that was forecasted. Despite this, U.S. same-store sales grew more than expected, and the CEO highlighted that growth reflects the company's ability to perform in a challenging environment, noting continued declines in traffic from lower-income consumers while higher-income consumer traffic remained strong. McDonald's net income rose slightly to $2.28 billion, or or $3.18 per share, which is up from the $2.26 billion just a year earlier, though a higher tax rate weighed on earnings, CNBC has reported. Shares climbed over 3% in morning trading, and the company expects consumer pressure to persist into 2026. Chinese electric vehicle maker Xpeng plans to launch robotaxis next year and unveiled its latest humanoid robot model, signaling a shift toward becoming more than just an automaker. The company introduced 3 robotaxi models, powered by its self-developed Turing AI chips, which provide 3,000 TOPS of computing power for its second-generation Vision Language Action AI system. Xpeng is partnering with Alibaba's AutoNavi mapping service for navigation and ride-hailing integration, with testing set to begin in several Chinese cities. Co-president noted that the accelerated pace of AI development has brought the company closer to deploying robotaxis globally, despite regulatory hurdles, CNBC has reported. Xpeng plans 2 robotaxi categories: commercial shared vehicles and fully autonomous personal cars, joining competitors and Tesla in the growing autonomous vehicle market. Toyota unveiled WalkMe, a 4-legged autonomous chair designed to navigate terrain where wheels cannot, at the Japan Mobility Show 2025. The chair uses robotic limbs inspired by animal locomotion to climb stairs, traverse uneven ground, and maintain balance on slopes, gravel, or obstacles. Equipped with sensors, LiDAR, and smart algorithms, WalkMe can adjust its movements for stability, respond to voice commands, and display vital information on an armrest screen. The chair seat is ergonomically designed, and the legs can retract to fold the system into a compact size for easy storage or transport, Interesting Engineering has reported. This prototype reflects Toyota's push to combine robotics, artificial intelligence, and human-centered design to enhance mobility and independence for people with reduced mobility. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered top officials to prepare proposals for potentially resuming nuclear testing, framing the move as a direct response to U.S. President Donald Trump's surprise instruction that the United States was to begin tests after a more than 30-year hiatus. At a televised Security Council meeting, Putin told the foreign and defense ministers to gather information and submit coordinated plans, and senior officials, including the defense minister, urged immediate preparations. Council members said U.S. statements on testing were unclear. Washington has not conducted explosive nuclear tests since 1992, and experts say reactivating the Nevada site would take years. Russian military leaders warned that different types of tests can take months to years to prepare, and he cited a location as a ready test site, NBC News has reported. Trump's announcement has drawn criticism from nuclear scientists and non-proliferation experts. Private sector payrolls grew modestly in October, adding 42,000 jobs and slightly exceeding expectations, this according to ADP. Gains were concentrated in large companies, which added 76,000 jobs, while smaller businesses lost 34,000 positions, raising concerns since small firms generate most U.S. jobs. The trade, transportation, and utility sector led growth with 47,000 jobs, followed by education and health services at 26,000 and financial activities at 11,000, while information services dropped 17,000, professional and business services dropped 15,000, other services dropped 13,000, and manufacturing dropped 3,000. Wages continue to rise, with year-over-year pay growth at 4.5% for existing employees and 6.7% for job switchers, CNBC has reported. With the government shutdown delaying official BLS report, ADP data and upcoming indicators such as layoffs, jobless claims, and consumer sentiment are being closely watched to gauge labor market health. Okay, everyone, that is our show for today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see everyone tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for another episode of The News with BC. And until then, I hope everybody has a wonderful day.